Whatever.
'Good evening and welcome to the regular school board meeting for Independent School District 833. It is Thursday, October 4th, 2018 at 6:30 p.m. and we are at the District Service Center in Cottage Grove, Minnesota. 1.0 is roll call.
Pat Driscoll is absent. Heather Hirsch.
Present.
Michelle Whitty. Here. Katie Schwartz.
Here.
Sharon Van Leer.
Here.
Ron Kath.
Here.
Tracy Burnett.
Here. 2.0 is Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand and join us.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Three 3.0 is the approval of our agenda. I will entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Sharon and second by Katie. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. 4.0 are district highlights. Those items will be on our October 17 agenda. 5.0 is public comment. That will also be on the agenda October 17. 6.0 is the consent agenda, and all consent items are considered routine and non-controversial by the school board and will be approved by a single motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items, but prior to the meeting, board members had the opportunity to review them and could have requested that any item be moved to an action item. We did not have that this evening, so I will entertain a motion to approve our consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Sharon, second by Katie. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. 7.0 are the workshop items. 7.1 is our elementary mathematics update, and our Director of Teaching and Learning Services, Kelly Jansen, will present.
Thank you, Chair Burnett. We're excited to be here tonight to give you an update on our elementary math curriculum. I am excited to present with Stacy Benz, our elementary curriculum coordinator, and I'm going to let her tell you a little bit about herself before we get started.
Hello, thank you for having me today. I'm really excited to be here in South Washington County School District. I have a history of working in Spring Lake Park Schools as a second and third grade teacher, lead teacher, instructional coach, and dean of students in the middle school. And I most recently was a principal in Stillwater Schools. So I'm excited to be here to support the work of the district and to help support our students and our staff.
So together we have been working with our staff on our elementary math. This journey began long before we started in July. So this 833 math belief statement was crafted by a team of educators and administrators. And I just want to point out a few of the key words, and because this was the mission and what are we trying to accomplish in math classes in 833. We certainly want to reach all students, and all means all. We want to find ways to mentor and support every one of our students in every way that they learn. Find ways to connect with them so that they can feel successful, especially in math. Math is something that sometimes kids get very frustrated with. So that was our goal as we looked for a curriculum resource. We also developed these 4 key concepts that the math curriculum needed to address to develop a deep understanding, have positive feelings about math, making math fun, be relevant and apply their learning to experiences outside of their classroom, and that the classroom needs to be engaging and learning for students. To that end, as you know, in our grades K2, we adopted a program called Bridges, and Bridges is from the Math Learning Center, and from my experience, it definitely is one of the most progressive curriculums out there. It has a model that that is definitely non-traditional when you think of a math classroom, and Stacy's going to give you a little bit more in depth about that. But so 15 of our elementary schools adopted the bridges, and we had one school that was finding success and meeting the students' needs, and the staff was successful with the frameworks. So they're continuing to use the frameworks as we meet our math standards. In order to do the implementation, our teachers, as you know, attended 2 days of intense professional development this summer. We also had a half-day workshop for some of our specialists in the fall workshop. And then now in November, we have an in-depth training scheduled for our special ed teachers and our interventionists. So they will learn how to use the intervention kit and how they can modify the curriculum for their students. Another piece of this was giving our principals a big picture view of what Bridges looks like and how they can support Bridges in their classrooms. So we also did some principal professional development, and we're going to continue those throughout the year so that we can support the principals supporting the teachers in their class. So as I mentioned, Stacy has done a lot of the work in classrooms and has done a lot of observations and working with our PLC facilitator, so I'm going to turn it over to her at this point to talk about our K-2 Bridges.
As Kelly had mentioned, in the Bridges curriculum really aligns to what the District 833 believes and wants for the students to have a deep understanding of mathematical concepts. One of the ways they do this is repetitive skills that are taught throughout number corners and throughout workplaces, and I'll get into that in a little bit. But really what's exciting is the students are sharing and talking about their math and their thinking at a level that goes beyond your typical sit and do some worksheets on your own independently. The Bridges uses a really strong visual model to help students understand number sense, and there's been a lot of work already in the district about number sense, and so that supports that work as well. The three things that Bridges does to support that work is through the direct instruction, which would be the whole group instruction, how the students investigate what they're doing, and then finally their open exploration. These are the last few weeks I've spent a lot of time in classrooms, and it's been exciting to see the students in action and the teachers really engaging in this work. In the upper left-hand corner, actually both of these photos are from kindergarten classrooms. In the upper left-hand corner, the teacher is doing some what they're calling flash and build. So they flash a tens frame, and then the students flash the same number of fingers. So it's a really quick assessment to see our students understanding. They'll show this little card, flip it over so they can't see it, and understand, can the student identify that there are 2 dots on this card? And it's interesting to see which kids can get that real fast and which kids need more support, so that will help the teacher know what kind of instruction to provide students in the small group activities. In this next class, there's another kindergarten class at a different school. Each student has a 5 frame on the table that you can see, and the teacher will also flash this 5 frame, and then the students will put some dots on there to show that they know. And it was really exciting to watch these kids, I mean, really get excited. Yes, there were celebrations, and there was a lot of excitement with that. So this is the whole group lesson where they're giving the instruction. Oftentimes they'll be sharing an activity that will be extended into the workplaces later in the week. This is an example of a first grade classroom. This was one of the lessons that was taught the very first week of school. And the students are creating their favorite popsicle stick or their favorite popsicle flavor. And with that, the teacher was able to capture what some of these students said. I know you can't read it there, but for instance, some of the things that they noticed in this is, I see a pattern, oh, I get it. Hey, we added 1 more popsicle to each row, and we can count by 2s if we count the sticks. So they're understanding numbers and patterns very early on in the problems and investigations. This is also a very important part. It's called Number Corner, and it's outside of the math block. It's meant to be a 20-minute daily math skills, and it repeats based on the month. So both of these are examples of September, but now that I've been in classes this week in October, it's changed. So the kids are getting new patterns and new ideas and learning new vocabulary. In the upper left-hand corner, this is a kindergarten classroom again, and the students are identifying a pattern, and they turn and talk to a neighbor. What kind of pattern did you see? This little guy is showing that up in the corner there was a pattern card, so it helps to identify what is the pattern. I know where to look. One of the little girls in this class noticed that the patterns were going on a diagonal, so she understood the next pattern was going to be yellow and what that shape was. In the bottom corner, this is an example of a first grade classroom. You can see that it's very important that they have the calendar, and they also have number lines, and each day they're recognizing something unique. So that grid that's kind of in the center of the page, they're counting by tens, they're doing the same thing every day and starting to really build upon their skills. I think this is one of the most exciting parts of the curriculum. This is called Workplaces, and students in kindergarten and first grade are doing a lot of exploring at this time in September. These students were using polydrons, and they're building things, and they're able to identify these are squares, these are triangles, and they have different shapes that they're making. In one of the classrooms, I asked a little kindergartner who it was his 11th day of school what shape he had in his hand, and he told me it was a cube. And I said, well, how do you know that's a cube? And he counted the sides, and I thought that was pretty impressive for a little guy that had just started kindergarten. And then they're also working with the pattern blocks, naming those shapes, and they're having conversations. They're understanding how pieces work together. And in the corner on the bottom, it's a little bit hard to see, but they're using geoboards, and they have little rubber bands, and so they're creating their own shapes and naming those, talking about sides and those kinds of things. This is a really adorable little situation where I come up to this little guy and I say, well, what are you doing? And he said, well, I've made a rectangle and a trapezoid on my geoboard. And I thought that was quite impressive, knowing that we've got kids that are just in their first month of school able to use this language just through exploration and their time in their workplaces.
So as you can see, our implementation is going really well. I commend our teachers and our principals. It's a lot of work, and a curriculum implementation takes a lot of time, and so they are working overtime, to say the least, about putting things together and putting all the workstations together. But we are seeing it pay off with our kiddos as we walk through these classrooms, and they're having math conversations, and they're having fun when they're doing math. So it's very exciting. So what's next? 3-5, we are in the process, and right now we've pulled together people that were on the leadership team to have a conversation about, is Bridges the right resource for grades 3, 4, and 5? And that's what we're looking at right now, and to evaluate that, and based on does it meet our needs as far as the standards go that we want to address. We are in the learning research work, kind of the top of the triangle, where we are studying, we are comparing, we're doing gap analysis with the curriculum and with our standards. We will be bringing a decision, or if there is a decision, that we will be going with it to make a recommendation for Bridges by January is our goal, so that we can plan for planning for implementation through the spring and into next fall. If we decide Bridges isn't the right fit, then we'll head down a different path and have a different conversation about what is the right fit, because we want to make sure that our teachers have the resources they need. Math in the upper grades is a tricky subject, and it gets a little more complex, and so we want to make sure our teachers have the resources, especially as these kids move from K2, from that type of environment in Bridges all the way through our system. So we are building a strong math program at our elementaries, and I just was with some middle school teachers a few weeks ago, and one of them even said, like, well, think of everything they're doing in elementary. It's going to pay off for us someday. So it's very exciting, and we appreciate the opportunity to implement this program in 833. Any questions on elementary math?
The one thing I'd say about these types of curriculums where we're going with math is trying to engage kids and keep their curiosity. Because, and I was modeling that for Brian earlier, curiosity at all levels. But what happens with math is kids can learn the mechanical manipulation of problems easily, but they don't understand that applying, and then they create, if we move in a direction too quickly for some kids, then they really struggle with math. So that play is really important. It really is important through high school too. So this creates a great foundation in the younger grades as we go up. But everyone has a different philosophy about math and what should be taught and when we get to certain concepts. And I think that's the challenge in the work as they look at 3 through 5 now.
So the question I would have then is probably the kindergarten parents don't know any different. But what about our parents that had their kindergartner go to first grade and the first graders to second grade when their curriculum changed? Have we gotten any feedback from parents at this point?
We haven't yet. That's a good point. We are working on a parent university for those parents to show them kind of what does this new math mean. There is a piece of Bridges that's a home connection book. And so we do have teachers using that home connection piece. And by home connection, I don't want you to confuse that with homework, because it's not just more work. It's actually involving parents in the conversation about what happened at school. But we are planning that parent university. And we also had a model that fit Bridges. So we had some problems and investigations or large group happening. We had workstations happening. So for most of our teachers, this was a natural fit. And for some, I would say it was a bigger shift, but I would say most of our teachers were doing some sort of small group and number sense and things like that. But we will plan a parent university for November to invite those parents in. We were just debating on bringing some 10 frames or 5 frames for you so you could see it, because you hear all these words and you don't know what that is or what that looks like. So, but we're working on that parent component.
Can I just make a comment on that too, Ron? With this new curriculum has so much more communication for families about what we're teaching and when we're teaching it. I think there's a lot more for them to look at and to understand. From our old Pearson curriculum, didn't really have that connection. We had some online resources where they could look at the book online, but this really explains in detail. Like, they can send things home and say, here's what you can do with your child at home to help with what we're doing right now. So it really lays things out, I think, a lot better in explaining to parents why we're doing it. So just more resources to send home, which has been great.
And then probably my other question, maybe just a clarification. When you started your presentation, I'm forgetting the term now real quick, but you said it was, I wrote it in my note, progressive. So sometimes progressive can have a negative connotation. So can you give us just kind of a little bit of a feel of why it's a good thing to be progressive in this situation?
Yeah, I think a couple things about that come to mind, and as I said it, I thought, oh yeah, but I would say that when you think of math, you think of a book, where a kid opens a book and they turn a page and they do problems, and it's do the odds today and the evens tomorrow, and I think what I meant by progressive is this, kids are playing math games and they're learning math concepts, and it's becoming part of who they are, and that's why it's a good thing that kids are liking math. And I think that's what I'm working on in progressive, is that we're really trying to instill that love of math early so that they aren't frustrated when they get into the harder concepts as they get older. And progressive meaning that a lot of schools don't have the small group structure in math yet. You hear a lot about guided reading and you hear a lot about reading groups. And we know that's best practice to meet kids where they are and to personalize learning. So for this district to have made that step with the math is very progressive and very ahead of where other schools are. So this curriculum meets that need.
All right, thanks.
Anyone else?
So the parent universities, are those more common now to have? I mean, is it just not only why, but also helping parents figure out how to help? I mean, I realize my ability to help my kids was like done by 3rd grade math because the language had changed so much. So estimation, well, I know how to do that, and then I didn't. So I'm just wondering if it includes how to help them.
I think both. I think it's certainly the why, and here are some of the terms that might be new to math for you, and here's how. I think Mr. Ross has a better handle on the home connection pieces, but I think that, from what I've seen, does a good job of explaining it to parents in a way that they can help. But math, that does get really complex. We did 2nd grade math in our school communicators meeting, and that was pretty tough. So as kids get older, I mean, it does, and it's harder for parents to help. So it'll certainly be a part of both of that, and I think understanding the why also helps. The other piece with the new math is that there's not a right answer sometimes. There's many different ways. You know, we always went with show your work, and if you missed step 2, now it's very open, so kids have the ability to get to answers however they find one, and that's new. And so that's another thing that could help parents say, I don't know that way, but I can show you this way, and kids are finding what works for them.
Okay. That's where I think the positive aspect, where Ron was saying the new math, when people used to say, I can't do it the way they're doing it, but I understand how to do this. This opens that door. So however you get to the answer is fine, which is what we want with all learning.
Thank you.
Great, thank you very much.
Yep.
7.2, elementary standards-based instruction, and we will have Kelly back and also Brian Boothe, our Director of Professional Development and Accountability.
So I will kick it off. I've talked a lot, but I will. When I came into the district, I was very excited at the journey that we've started with standards-based instruction and standards-based reporting. It really is a way to explain to parents, and I think going back to that parent component, how can I help my child? And I think the language that we use with success criteria and the way that we have unpacked these standards really demonstrates to a parent the learning that their child is doing. And it also allows that parent to understand that standard, what they could do. If it's count to 30, then they know that, you know, we're sitting in the car and these are things I can practice with them. When you just see math as an S or an S plus or a B, you don't know what they're missing. And so it was an exciting, they've done a lot of work, and I was excited to come into this journey and to continue this journey. So we are now explaining standards-based because our grades 3 through 5 have ELA standards-based on their report card and a few other, and I know Brian will demonstrate or show you that later. But so the video you're about to see is going to be posted on the website for parents to understand the report card, and we'll also be giving it to our schools along with some parent communication tools. So Shelley's going to cue the video, and then Brian will demonstrate or show you the report card. Hello, I'm Kelly Jansen, and I'm honored to serve as the Director of Teaching and Learning Services for South Washington County Schools. I'm excited to be part of our journey in standards-based instruction and standards-based reporting. Standards-based instruction, or SBI as you may have heard it called, sets out to clarify expectations of what we want students to know and be able to do. It comes directly from the standards that the state sets out for us to make sure that our students are learning in our schools.
When teachers use a standards-based progress report, they grade on a different scale. They're going to grade on a scale of a 1, 2, 3, or 4. Parents might also see an NG, which stands for not graded yet, or they might see blanks if the material hasn't been covered in class yet.
So a lot of parents might ask, what does a 1 represent on their assessments or on the report card? A 1 is just kind of the beginning of a standard, like a child is just learning that standard, and they might need a lot of support and guidance. They might need reteaching, which is going to be very typical for the beginning of the year. I think about my math students coming in and understanding their multiplication facts. And the majority of my children might know their very basic facts, but they don't know all of them, and they're not able to recite them quickly. So then throughout the year, as they learn different strategies, they need less and less help from me, the teacher. I'm doing less reteaching. I might only need to prompt them once in a while, and that's going to then move them along that scale of a 1 being that they need lots of help, and a 2 is they just need a little bit of support and guidance, and a 3 is finally that mastery. And I think this is shifting us away from just giving an average score to being much more open to that growth mindset of this is where your child is starting, but they still have a long way to go.
It really does together provide a framework for teachers, for students, for families to have conversations about how their individual child is doing in school, and it really takes on personalization, which is a goal of South Washington County Schools, of having those conversations about how your child is doing in school.
So what's on the progress report? That's always kind of the big question. So you're going to see things on there like PE, art, music, if a student is in band or orchestra, media specialists. But you're also going to see full I Can statements in the area of English language arts, so reading, writing. But you'll see some generic I Can statements in other subjects like science, social studies, and math. And the reason behind that is because this is new for our teachers as well. And so we're going to slowly add I Can statements over the years to get more specific in other subject areas. So when will parents see these progress reports? The first time you're going to get a chance to see the full progress report is during fall conferences. They'll be printed and given from the teacher to the parents during conferences. The second time you'll see them are at winter conferences, and then we'll print them and mail them home at the end of the year. In the end, we believe that this is going to make a great difference for our students and for our families because you're going to clearly know what a student can or cannot do. It's just a new way of communicating progress.
So as your child goes through this process of standards-based reporting and standards-based instruction, you're bound to have questions, and we encourage you to reach out to your child's teacher. Our principals are also very involved, so please make sure if you're still having those questions to reach out, and certainly we're there for support at the district office as well, and we are happy to guide you through those questions as you wonder what this transition in standards-based reporting means.
All right, well, good evening. My role in this is to kind of walk the school board and our amazing cabinet members here as well through the multitude of documents that are in your board packet. The history behind this, as Kelly mentioned, is from the strategic plan. One of our objectives is personalization, and standards-based instruction has been a part of that over the past few years. We started this a few years ago, moving kindergarten to a full standards-based progress report. And then last year we moved to 1st and 2nd grade. And so what's new this year is we're moving forward to 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade. You'll also notice that all of the specialist areas are included in that now as well, which is exciting. So in your board packet, you're going to find the progress reports for each grade level. There are some differences as you go. And so the first kind of major difference would be that there are no such thing as work habits in kindergarten. We've kind of talked about the fact that having work habits in kindergarten would be a little too strange to say that it's work in our kinder rooms. But there are work habits on the 1st through 5th grade progress reports. Social emotional development is fully described in the K through 2 progress reports. But it is kind of in we kind of say like a generic I-CAN statement in 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade. And the reason why, as I mentioned in the video, and I just kind of wanted to underline this point, is that this is a lot of work, and this is a different way of grading and communicating. So our 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade progress reports in math, science, social studies, and social emotional development have just a single I-CAN statement. And that would be for this year, to allow us to really continue to learn as a 3rd, 4th, or 5th grade teacher how to grade and report in this manner. And so in future years, my hope is next year we'll be able to show up with 1 or 2 more subjects added on there, and so we can keep moving forward. To prepare our staff this year for this rollout, we have done professional development. We've been working with our K through 2 teachers over the last few years, and 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade teachers as well have been unpacking documents, developing success criteria. Last year they practiced on a couple of benchmarks and shared those scores with parents just to start to get used to this and start the conversation. So why standards-based instruction? Why is this an important part of personalization? And the blunt and easy answer is it's good for kids. Standards-based is a clear way for us to communicate with parents. It's a better way for teachers to share the strengths and weaknesses. And it's also a better way for kids to talk about how they're doing, how they're progressing. As you know, my children attend this school system as well, and my oldest is in 4th grade, and she had some friends over recently, and I got a chance to listen in on a conversation, and I wish I would have taped it. So I did not provoke this conversation. They were talking about social studies, and one of the other kids at the table said that, oh, did you know they got rid of ABC this year, and they've moved to a 1, 2, 3, 4, and I got a 4 on my social studies test. It was about the Great Basin. Now, I'm a social studies teacher, and I lived near the Great Basin, and let me tell you, people who live near the Great Basin don't know where the Great Basin is. That young lady's a 4. And so she demonstrated mastery of the concept and of the content, and the students themselves are able to talk about where am I progressing, where are my strengths, and where are my weaknesses, where do I need to grow. And so we wanted to put these documents in front of you so that you got a chance to see them prior to parents getting them here in the next few weeks. Fall conferences will begin. There is also an additional document in your board packet that is the 4th grade parent document. And so each grade has one of those. We didn't put them all in there because it would have been a lot of things to look at. I believe the 4th grade one is about 28 pages long. Every I-CAN statement that's on the progress report has the success criteria to go with it. So if you're mom, dad, guardian, student, and you're looking at your progress report come fall and you see a 1 on there, you can go online or go connect with the teacher, and you can look to see what is the description of a 1. What's the description of a 2? What's a 3 look like? So that way I have goals I can look to improve upon. And so we wanted to show you that parent document as well. And so the video that you've seen, all of the progress reports that you have in front of you, and then the parent document as well, are all on the Standards-Based Instruction website under Teaching and Learning. And so any parent has access to that. And our hope is that for parents, this really outlines what are your children going to learn in 4th grade this year, in 3rd grade. And so we wanted to get this information in front of you as parents are going to start coming to fall conferences here pretty soon. Yeah.
I think it's important when you look at 3rd grade for mathematics. This isn't the only thing a parent will receive, because this is a progress report, not the end of the try. There's a lot of conversations. The conference is really important to really talk about the student and what they know in math and answer the questions. So if a parent saw that and said, this is all I'm going to find out about math, this doesn't tell me much, but it's a much more in-depth process.
I mean, as we move forward, and when math is fully on there, then we'll have kind of the same conversations. But certainly our teachers are giving all kinds of information at conferences. In fact, I believe you're going to hear a little bit about Seesaw from Ed. And Seesaw is a great way of collecting evidence and portfolio usage. And so, yeah, that's not the only thing that they're going to hear about.
Any questions?
It's more of a comment. As a parent that's gotten these progress reports, I'm kind of glad to see it as 2 pages, because I think last year in 2nd grade it was like 4. And not that I don't want to have a lot of information. It's a lot of information, and I'm like, what do I do with it? And that was what it was. It was, what now what do I do with this? Because you only have 15 minutes to talk with the teacher. So they're pointing out usually the, really good things, and then the other end, what they really need to work on. So you kind of have that middle where then you're looking at that. And depending on which conferences, there's a lot in that middle. And so I do kind of like this. The math one I wish was a little bit more, I think, because, well, for me, that's what he's bringing home, is a lot of math that's not finished. And so for me, I would like to know more about where he is in that math area. I think reading is important as well, but I guess a little bit more on math rather than some of the other ones, but just my opinion.
It was a long discussion with our teachers and administrators about how many I can statements we should put on this year, and our thinking behind that was, let's get ELA, let's go and get that fully on the progress report, and then use the opportunity to kind of learn where we're going with math. And I think what's nice, as you just heard from Kelly's presentation, as we're going through and looking at what 3rd through 5th is going to be using for instructional materials, it's kind of a good time to make sure we're going slow. So it's kind of a go slow to go fast, and I hope our community can support that, a slow rollout for our teachers, because this is a hard way to grade. This is a different way. And then in terms of the overall length of the progress report, yeah, last year it was about 2.5 pages. And here's the fun part about that is when you look at the ELA benchmarks, there are 44 ELA benchmarks that our teachers are asked to teach in each grade level at the elementary level. And we only have somewhere between 9 to 13 depending on the grade. So we've prioritized as best we can, but there are plenty of standards beyond what's on that progress report. If we were to really put all of them on there, be a much longer progress report. And so, yeah.
Yeah, and I like I said, I really like it, especially with a student that struggled through like kindergarten and 1st grade. When he got this in 2nd grade, and it was like a game changer. We were able to really figure things out. And the only one I'm worried about is when he sees that he has to hit something with a long handled implement, that he'll start taking sticks off a tree and just randomly hit everything so that he can say that I can do that benchmark. But other than that, I think we'll be okay.
Yeah. Talk to your PE teacher.
Anyone else?
So I'm excited that we're getting further along. I know I was the one, like, when we were in pre-K, I'm like, this is really long time. So do we keep going? We get to keep going now? Is that the...
We look at each other because we've had many
we've had many
work
sessions. It always
sessions.
seems really hard to imagine how to use the standards, yet so important in middle school and high school. Is it the same?
We're just going to have Sarah figure it out.
Okay, that's good. There we go.
Lots of whiteboard conversations Brian and I have had mapping this out in what years and what's the progression, and trying to really ensure the parents don't see a gap to go from standards based and then have it drop would be tough. It's a change. So, and also having the conversation about secondary and the value of a GPA and the value of a transcript and how does standards based fit in with that. And grading, so starting those conversations very soon, but we certainly we have a vision to roll it out.
Yeah, and we've been laying the foundation for it for the last couple of years, and so just today we had our 7th grade ELA teachers in unpacking documents, creating success criteria, and so that's not something that's going on a progress report this year, but it's the type of thing that, depending on how we're moving forward, we have the puzzle pieces ready to go, and our teachers find it incredibly valuable, just the conversation of what it is we're supposed to teach in a certain grade level, what does mastery look like, and then the follow-up conversations of how do we assess this and how do we share information with parents. And so that's where we're at, and we're kind of at, I think, an exciting and nervous kind of time as we think about what future years might look like. But our administrators and our community certainly would be involved in any of those conversations, and our teachers as well. And so kind of a vague non-answer, I know, but.
And we're also bringing together 4 separate middle schools and 3 separate high schools to try to make sure that we do have that guaranteed viable curriculum across the district. And this is what we guarantee you're going to learn in this class. And so that also adds a little bit of complexity into it. It's not just one school that could do it every week. It's a process. So, but it's happening, and it's been exciting.
I'll just share, the 7th grade ELA team today was arguing over the phrase intentionally sophisticated language. It was a writing benchmark, and that's one of the things in their success criteria. Intentionally sophisticated. And I said, well, here's the thing. You could use your success criteria as an example of what intentionally sophisticated language is, because you're being intentionally sophisticated with which words you're choosing. And so it's complicated work for our educators, but it's good work.
The nuance, too, as you go to standards-based is that we've always had objectives, and standards have been around since the early 90s. But we weren't standard-based. We referenced the standards, so what we would do is we would teach and we would assess, then we would average things. And so we were compared against each other. Standards, you're compared against the standard, and if you think about with athletics, if you're on a track team, you're compared to, can you run the mile in 6 minutes? And then you get assessed at how close you are to that. Versus we have 10 kids running the mile, and we average the times, and wherever I ended up, I get a grade close to that. And so it really does go to that personalization, helping parents really understand that this is what my student can do versus I got that B, but is that an average? So it's great work. The hardest part will be as we get into the standards-based reporting for secondary, as I said. There's so many philosophical pieces, and parents have strong feelings about what they remember on grades. And that's around the country. Schools have been trying to do it well in high school, and that's still one of the hardest parts. Pre-K through 8 works really well, and it just gets harder at the high school because of college and because of what people are concerned with within the system, but then outside of the system. So it's great work, but it's going to be hard work. And I really appreciate the thinking about rolling this out in a slower time frame as people understand it, and by the time their kids get up to the high school, this will seem so comfortable, it'll be easier to get past some of the philosophicals. I'd like to say that, and I see Heather, how you react. It's been such a hard uphill climb around the country that's easy to say, but it's hard to implement. So.
I like the social and emotional development. I'm thinking most adults could use some of those standards-based things too. So. But it's great. Thank you.
Heather has been involved in the writing of some of those benchmarks that are now on the progress reports in our primary grades. And so,
some days I'm a 2, but I'm working to get to that 4 on that social emotional.
Thank you. It's great. Thanks.
8.0 information items. 8.1 is showcase of our schools. We have Pullman Elementary and Woodbury High School here. So we have Ed Ross from Pullman and Sarah Sorenson-Wagner from Woodbury High.
Thank you, Chair Burnett, Dr. Jacobus, the rest of the school board. Just a note on the standards piece too. I think, Brian, when we did some training on it, one of the things in the social, emotional, and work habits, we have our teachers looking at, when they used to grade math, they sometimes would grade in whether a kid turned an assignment in on time, which really is not a grade on how a student is performing in math. That can be taken care of now when you look into work habits. So when a parent sees, yeah, your child, or as a teacher, your child might be struggling turning things in on time. So work habits, I'm going to show that they're not doing well at this time, but yet they know how to do their math. And that's really what we're trying to separate out in that. And I think that was a real eye-opener for our teachers too. And I think that'll be good moving on, that students are showing what they're doing actually in the subject instead of sometimes they're more social, emotional, or not turning things in. So just kind of a plug. It's been going in the right direction. I know Brian's done a lot of work with that. We wanted to talk a little bit tonight about our personalization, what we're doing. I didn't realize it was sucker night, so I will make sure I come back and bring maybe T-shirts for the group. The Woodbury High School Suckers are great, so thanks, Sarah, for bringing those. Yeah, right. Yep, that's what she did. You should have told me. When you're going to bring gifts, you need to tell me. Well, I did bring a handle, but that's not as much fun. I wanted to talk a little bit about some things we're doing at Pullman for personalization and how we reach out not just to students but to some families, the community as well. So one of the first things I wanted to talk about was the mentor program, and I brought a handout because I forgot to include it in the board packet, so I apologize for that. But at the beginning of the year, we do run a mentoring program within our building, and it's for all adults to look at how we work with students outside of the classroom. Our elementary teachers do a great job, I think, of connecting with kids on a daily basis, but sometimes kids need that second adult. So I wanted to show, I'm not going to go through the packet completely, but just that we target our mentoring program. We just don't say to our adults who are willing to work with kids, our paras who might volunteer. This is kind of a volunteer piece because they do it above and beyond what they're doing in the regular classroom. So we target the teachers and the paras, and sometimes it's been our custodian as well. Just going over things that when you're mentoring a student, things you need to do, how you build competent students within the building, guidelines for mentors, because we don't always want to talk about schoolwork and how things are going at school, but what you're doing, of course, to become a better student. And then on the back page, we just listed some things about when you do meet with kids and you want to reach out to them, how you can go about it. So we do spend time at the beginning of the year revisiting that. And then we just feel like it's important for our kids to have a second person within the building that they can go to, because we know not all the time that it's a great fit for some kids in classrooms. And then they have that second adult that they can reach out and be with during the year. This year, the second piece, Family Information Night. With our beginning of the year assessments that we did with our students in the end of August, we decided to not do open house this year. Open house is a kind of a staple and a tradition at many elementary schools. And so we switched to a parent information night at the end of September, which just happened last week. We felt like, for those of you that have been through open house, it's a great night just to walk through, but it's very chaotic. You very rarely get a chance to talk with the teacher. Students who have special needs, it can be a very overwhelming night. So we encourage families to come back in, and we scheduled 2 sessions for parents who had multiple kids. And then we had activities to do in between to meet specialist teachers. And we tried to have the teachers do a presentation just kind of about where they're at right now, what the school day looks like, and maybe to answer questions that parents might have. I don't know, Katie, I was kind of stuck in a meeting, so I didn't get a chance to get around to everybody, but you were there that night, and you felt maybe it was a little bit more connected than what we've done with open house in the past?
I really liked it. I don't feel there were as many parents maybe as it would have been nice to have more. I think in Henry's classroom there were 4 of us, but I've never really gotten to know the teachers as well as I did this time, like actually about her and more of her teaching style and what it was going to be like in the classroom and what they would be doing throughout the year in the classroom. So I feel like it was more information than I had ever gotten, even knowing, and I've been there a long time. I've had kids there for a long time, and yeah, I want to say this was probably the best open house type setup they've had.
And we had our PTA meeting on Monday, and I had a number of families that said the same thing. So I hope it'll grow next year. I know in some other sessions, we had about probably 60% of our families that showed up. But that was really good information to share with families too, and more personalized. Our AVID Club, we are a AVID showcase school. We had all of our K through 5 teachers trained here in the last 6 or 7 years for AVID. We had started an AVID club and replaced our student council, and it's a leadership club that helps then feed into the middle schools. And right now we have about 40 members in 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade, and they do leadership activities throughout the school. They meet twice a month. And then we also bring in community speakers from doctors, lawyers, to small business owners, Park Cafe. Keith Franke talked to our students last year. We had the mayor out. So just different, to expose our kids to different opportunities of what you can do as you move on beyond elementary school. Our turkey dinner is probably the biggest community event in St. Paul Park. It's grown. I've been at Pullman for the past 12 years. We started a turkey dinner 12 years ago, and we decided just to offer a free night for families to come out and have turkey, and we don't charge. And originally, I started catering in the turkey from Tanucci's, and I got some grants to pay for that. And we had a few hundred people on our first one. Well, it grew very quickly, and I couldn't afford Tanucci's any longer, and we started to look at our own food service department. And I worked with, at the time, Barbastas, and they got us a heck of a deal on good turkey, that's Jenny-O turkey, and mashed potatoes and all the fixings, and we offer it free to the community, and we encourage our students to bring guardians, grandparents, and whatnot. Well, last year we served probably, I think it was 560 people, and we were just completely packed in the gym, out into the hallways. Staff collect money. It's all paid for by staff. They collect money, we buy turkeys, we give gift cards out, every student, we play bingo during the evening, and we just bring, it's been a huge community event. My worry is that it's getting too big and we won't be able to house it at Pullman any longer, but there's really no other area in the community that's as big as our school. But to have over 500 people, you know, in our building has been really a great event, and parents and family members look forward to it. So that's a really great connection for our school. This last year for first grade backpacks, I had a parent of one of my teachers who works in Dakota County ask if she could provide some holiday items for some of our students in first grade. And she was just thinking a few students that were in need adopt some families within her daughter's classroom. Well, she started collecting money at work and ended up collecting enough money to house or to provide all of our first graders in the whole grade level backpacks that were had a bunch of holiday gifts in it that were education related, like brand new markers, coloring books, brand new books, videotapes. So she contacted me this year and she wants to expand it, and we ended up getting a matching grant, and I have a feeling we might be able to do all of our kindergarten, first, and second graders. So at the holiday time, we're sending kids home with, and it was really nice stuff last year. I mean, they spent a lot of money, and that was all through donations. And now it's been expanded that we might be able to provide all of our kids around that holiday time just with something a little bit extra. One of my kindergarten teachers wrote a grant too this year where they're going out to Norris Square, and they are going to create projects with kindergartners and the senior citizens. They ordered these different art projects and things like that, and they're going to make connections with our seniors at Norris Square throughout the year, which I thought was a great reach out to some of our people in the community. Our Global Arts Festival is something we've run for a number of years, and that's a celebration at the end of the school year where we bring in community members from around the metro to showcase some of the different cultural backgrounds that we have within in the metro area, but also within our school. We have parents that speak sometimes at the event or perform. We bring in food trucks from all around the metro, and that's a huge event come the end of the year. Our school tries to plan like 3 events throughout the year that are big, that bring in a lot of the community, and that kind of kicks off, or that ends our year. It's kind of our culmination. And the last piece I just wanted to hit on, Brian just mentioned it briefly, But that's the next slide with Seesaw. I know you've had some information and presentations on Seesaw. Our school's a one-to-one, so of course all of our students have iPads, and we've been very, I would say, proficient and progressive at using technology that is a way to communicate with families. And Katie knows a little bit of this because she's had children that have gone through there. But in the last couple of years, we've used Seesaw as a big communication tool with our families. And the post that you see up there, that was shared last year, and it might have been shared here at a board meeting. But we had over 3,000 posts. That means our teachers were sending information to parents through Seesaw, which the parents have signed up for the app. That's within like a 3-month period. And now that is tied into the standards that Brian was just talking about in K1 and 2 and 3. So when a teacher sees one of the students doing something, a work on a standard, they won't share to the parent that, hey, your child just is now able to add 1 + 2, but they'll send home shots of work they're doing, and then the teacher also can take that information and tie it into a 1, 2, 3, or 4. So our school is using that very heavily to communicate with parents. The next slide shows in that 3-month period, that's the number of hits we had. We had 32,000 hits that parents were checking those and responding or just looking at those. So I think that shows, and we're in a school of just under 400 kids, and we're tripling almost everybody else with that. So our teachers are to the point now where as a parent, if you were to go to our school, and Katie might be guilty of this, your phone might be going off, and a lot of times it's posts from the teacher during all day. And that is like knowing what's going on within the classroom. And that's that connection. And families now really can't say to us, well, we really didn't know what was happening there. Or, because now teachers use Seesaw to send out just quick information. Hey, remember tomorrow we're going on a field trip. If anybody needs this, please bring it along. I checked last week. I think we had 700 posts by our teachers in 1 week. And the number of families that were hitting on that were in the thousands. So that's just become a really good communication tool. When we talk about personalization, that families feel like they're there sometimes, and they don't need to be there. And it doesn't mean we're not communicating face-to-face or on the phone as well or through email, but it's just another way for our parents to get information and to respond to it very quickly. So I just wanted to share a few of those things. I appreciate you letting me come out tonight. And with that, I'll turn it over to Sarah.
I feel like we should clap.
Give him a sucker.
Yeah, I was going to say.
This is Patricia's. You can have a sucker, though. I know. See, I even made that scrapbook. So thank you for having us here this evening. These are just 2 small examples of really feeling good. Who doesn't feel good when you're given a lollipop or a good news card? We use these lollipops with our staff to show appreciation to one another. So at our monthly staff meetings, we have lollipop moments, we call them, and staff can stand up and in front of their colleagues recognize someone for something as small or large, whatever they choose, but that public recognition and affirmation, and thank you for being such a good colleague and elementary principal in District 833. Yeah. Am I up here? So I just brought a couple of examples of things that we're doing at Woodbury High School, specifically around personalization. We started last year intentionally in every staff meeting, and this aligns with our strategic plan of teachers documenting and having touch points with students and recording those efforts. So at every meeting, we have teachers pull up one of their class rosters, and at the high school level, a teacher can have anywhere from 120 to 180 students that they might see in a day. So to pick one class roster and spend some time seeing if they can identify something about each of their students. Not their grade, not behavior, but what do they know about the students in their classroom. And then to make a list of, maybe I don't know anything about that student. And intentionally write that student's name down, and in the next month, make an effort to pull that student aside, request them for roar time, talk to them after class, just some intentional relationship building. They have time to share success stories with one another in a staff meeting. And then we're also working on a system of documentation. So Kelly, can you click 2 slides ahead? This is, just some exposure to what we're doing at the high school level. So if I think of an elementary teacher who might have 25 students in their class, I would expect my daughter's elementary teacher to be able to know a fair amount of things about her. This is difficult for you to see, but this is a student inventory that we have several teachers that are using, and it's through a Google form, but the teacher can then ask the student's name, students identify their own strengths, their expected grade range, which provides some really good information to a teacher of that student's confidence in that class or what that student would consider successful. Their plan to achieve that grade, information that is their hobbies, just a good, easy way for teachers to generate information about students. And then at the end, you can see contact. This teacher has dated when they have had contact with the student and then when they have sent a good news card, which I'll talk about in a second. So this is just a massive organizational system that the teacher can start to warehouse when they have a large number of students. The contact that they have with students, with families, reaching out to build relationships, and then what they know about each student. So that's a big effort we started last year, and we're continuing this year as well. I have to go back. We have used these good news cards that you each received also since I started as principal of Woodbury, so we're starting our 5th year, and we are continuing to progress every year. The first year I just had them available for staff to pick up and use as they wanted. And then I started handing them out intentionally. And now we take time during staff meetings for every staff member to write 3. And these are just some prompts that I have given throughout the year. So 1 month, I might say, I want you to pick out 3 kids that you think are overlooked for recognition. So specifically targeting students and bringing up students to mind. Not always sending a card to the students, great job with your good grade, you got an A on your test, or not only sending a card to students who you know need a lot of encouragement. Those students tend to get a lot. Picking out a student who demonstrated a characteristic of our Woodbury way. Students you need to see during ROAR, parents you want to see during conferences, so we're starting to use them for a lot of different purposes. And beginning this year now, we are tracking every card that is sent to ensure that every student in our school receives one. And we're just at 2,000 students, so that's overwhelming and exciting, but also we send thousands of these cards now. We sent over 3,000 last year. So now we're trying to track to make sure that all our students are receiving them. We have great stories from parents. My favorite is when a parent will come up to me and say, "Do you know your teachers send these cards out?" I said, "Well, yes, I do. I designed it and had them printed." And that handwriting there is me addressing the labels, because we don't ask our teachers to do that. We want them to be able to come out quickly and get them into the hands of as many students as possible. I know high school, we sometimes lose the play of high school and acknowledging our students need this affirmation also. And it's good to hear when parents say, we tape those up to the fridge every time we get them, or they're struggling with their high schooler, and to have another adult call out their good work. As someone who has a high schooler now, and I don't always see it at home, it's nice when you hear others affirming that your child actually is doing great out interacting with other adults. So we have positive feedback from parents and students. Hopefully you also, I heard grumbling from other cabinet members, where's my good news card, where's my lollipop? Because students want them as well. Students look forward to getting them. The last thing that I'm going to share with you is we are talking about losing the fun of math when you get to high school. These are examples from my AP calculus teacher. And she uses information that she gathers, like on that big spreadsheet that I shared, to personalize her lesson plans. So she has a student that loves Michael Jackson. So for the lesson of that day, all of the PowerPoint slides have Michael Jackson. Or someone who likes Cupcake Wars. And for a student to sit in her class and be like, that's mine. I'm the Michael Jackson person. It's just another connection where that student is seen and they know their teacher cares about them and knows what they're interested in. So I like to include this example because this is what some would consider high-level, dry content, and a teacher's still able to engage kids and personalize and connect with them, even while delivering some high-level calculus content. So those are just a couple things that I brought to share with you, and thank you very much for having us.
When we talked about this and we asked principals to come and talk, I wanted them to share these personalized or the issues with personalization that we have moved forward, because these are things we don't hear about. And for the public, that is not fluff, that kind of work. That's the cornerstone of getting kids into feeling belonging, so they are delving in and taking that intellectual risk we need to get them where we need to go. Because we can lose kids really quickly, and all of the things we learned over the years about the belonging that kids need, it doesn't end in 5th grade. It doesn't end for adults. And so I really appreciate the work that our principals and our teachers have done. That PowerPoint to me is just, that is awesome to see. And that takes a lot of time, because you could easily do a PowerPoint and get those equations. So I'm really grateful that our staff has really looked at how do we make those connections. And those cards and in all of our schools, different things that we do, it's not just finding a way to send that card. It's really personalizing so the parent knows you do know their son or daughter, which is, as you know, as parents, if you have your kids, that's just great to get that. So thanks for coming in. And please try to get to that turkey dinner if you can get a seat. But you got to get there early. I think that's unbelievably impressive, the growth, though.
Very cool. Thank you very much for sharing.
Yeah, and I love the system. I think that's great, what you're doing with the system of, making sure every child gets touched. I mean, that's what's kind of a nice idea of trying to make sure that these things are consistently done, which is really awesome, because that's not easy to do. So thank you, both of you. It's very exciting to see personalization come to life.
I'm going to try this again and hope it's not as loud as earlier, but I will also say, so not only is it not just fluff and not just personalization, but many of the things that you talked about are evidence-based strategies that improve climate and culture for students. And so I just want to acknowledge that not only is it hitting on our personalization goals, but it's also what both the Department of Education and the U.S. Department of Education are really promoting as why students don't feel engaged in school and why students drop out of school and why students don't persist in school is because they don't have those connections and those relationships and that feeling of community and belonging, which I think is it's really exciting to see that what it looks like at an elementary, which some people are like, oh, that's really easy to do at an elementary school, but then also to see that what it looks like at a high school too, which I will not say surveying 500 meals of turkey dinner and having the mentoring program and the Avid Club, and all those are not easy things, but I think sometimes people think it's easier to visualize at an elementary school. So I think it's really exciting to see both of those settings in our district, so it's exciting.
9.0 discussion items. We don't have any this evening. 10.0 action items. 10.1 is the approval of open enrollment and IDT parameters. Our assistant superintendents, Mike Johnson and Julie Nielsen.
Or Nelson. You can call me Julie Nelson. I'll be on Care 11 at 10. So I've got to hurry. I've got to get to the set. I am here this evening with Mike Johnson to get final approval on our parameters around interdistrict transfers as well as open enrollment. And for the community, a reminder that our interdistrict transfer process is really in place for the resident students and having the opportunity to move across our elementaries, middles, and or secondary schools. And then open enrollment, of course, is kind of a two-part process, getting approved and accepted into the district under open enrollment, and then secondly, determining the placement within schools that have open spaces. The change from 2 weeks ago really is just that your crossed off lines and highlighted spaces where there were adds and changes are now on a clean document. So what you have in front of you this evening are the recommended parameters based on very little feedback and input last time because it's a pretty routine procedure for approving these parameters.
I will entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
It's moved by Sharon, second by Katie. Does anybody have questions, comments before we?
You get all the fun jobs, too.
Actually, I was listening to what's happening in the schools, and I was going to go move over there. But I thought, no, I have to do this, and then I have to get to the TV station. So that's it.
All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. 10.2, approval of sale of Go School Building Refunding Bond Series 2018B. Director of Finance, Dan Pyan.
Thank you. Good evening. And tonight we'll be discussing the sale of General Obligation School Building Refunding Bonds. I know Sharon told me she really wanted me to tell a story before. I really didn't want to because it's a short item, but I will tell you the other day we're changing our health insurance and there's this, when they present, they give you all these things, not personally, but for the district, and they give you these piles of papers and different coverages and all that. And I was looking through the formulary drugs and the list of all the drug names, and I come across this drug, and I really couldn't figure out. I never heard of it before, and I didn't really know what it did. It was called Viagra, and I Googled it to see what it does, and apparently, if a male takes it, he would actually stop and ask for directions if he's lost.
Thank you.
I think that's on the copay. Anyway, tonight we're going to ask you to approve the sale of some refunding bonds on September 6th of this year. We had met and recommended that we refund some bonds from 2010, about $27 million worth, and then the numbers have changed, and Jody will explain why. And at that time, we thought the rates would come in at about 3%. Right now, we're paying 4 or 5% on those bonds, so that obviously we're refinancing these and we'll save money on that. And this money will go to the taxpayers in the form of a lower tax levy. With that, I'll leave it up to Jody Zesba of Ehlers and Associates, and she'll explain the results of the sale of the bonds.
Thank you, Dan. Can you hear me okay? Is it close enough? Okay. I have extra copies if anyone wants to take them home and hang them on their fridge along with the postcards from my alma mater. I think I want to go back to high school after hearing about all the fun they're having there now. So if anyone needs an extra copy, I've got plenty here. Otherwise, everyone has them, probably, Dana, that they can see online. Okay, so we'll turn to the inside front cover. And we are refinancing some maturities from a building bond issue back in 2010. It was actually a refunding bond then, too, so this is the second time we're refinancing it. You'll see that the ratings, there were 2 ratings assigned, just like we normally do with your bond issues. So the Minnesota State Credit Enhancement Rating, that's a program where the rating agency will assign a nice high AA2 rating to your bonds. There's no cost to participate in the program, but the state guarantees the payment of the debt, and so that's why you get that rating at such a high level. Your underlying rating was affirmed at a single A2, and that was a result of a lot of information that they gathered from both Dan and Mike in a conference call that they participated in. So thanks to them for providing all the information that the rating agency wanted to see. The number of bids is not a typo. You got 13 bids today. We usually like to see 3, so 3 to 5 is kind of standard. 13 is awesome. We were super excited to see that level of interest in your bonds. The low bidder was JP Morgan out of New York, and you'll see the low bid was a 2.29%. The results of the sale are summarized in the table on that page, but most importantly, the savings then ended up being just a little bit higher than we estimated last month, so almost $1.5 million, which will be a savings to your taxpayers of almost $400,000 starting this next tax year, so taxes payable in 2019 through 2022. So we will submit this information to the Minnesota Department of Education. They'll adjust your final levy by that amount. They've already submitted your proposed levy to the county. So the final levy will include the adjustment for the savings. So we'll turn to the attachments to the report. The first attachment is the bid tab, which goes on for 3 pages because of all the bids that you received. So you'll see again, JP Morgan out of New York with their bid at 2.2942%. And on that page, all of the bidders were out of New York and right around that 2.3% range. Continues on to the second page with a lot of bidders also from throughout the United States, so good to see that. And Piper Jaffray out of Minneapolis is in the mix on the second page. And then the third page are the last 2 bidders. Wells Fargo bids. They generally do bid on municipal bonds out of their Charlotte, North Carolina office. And then Baird was the highest bidder at a 2.55%. So the next schedules are all updates. They're the exact same schedules that you saw in the pre-sale report, just updated now for the sale results. So we did get on page 4, you'll see we got a much higher premium that we expected, and that's been fairly common recently on the bond issues that we've been seeing. All of the other numbers are pretty close to what we were expecting. The next page hasn't changed at all, so attachments page 5 is your existing bond schedule. And attachments page 6 is the new bond schedule, and you'll see that within the yield statistics, that true interest cost, the TIC rate, is the rate that we award the sale based on, so that's the 2.29 or roughly 2.3% rate. And then our favorite page, page 7, shows the savings. That's the one you want to hang on your refrigerator. So that is about $1.5 million in savings, and again, with the debt service levy requirement, that you levy for your principal and interest payments at 105%. That's how we get to approximately $400,000 in savings every year. That does need to be passed on to your taxpayers in the form of a reduction in the debt service levy. You can't use it for other areas of your budget, but I'm sure your taxpayers will be happy to have that reduction. Then we do have a page that shows the current refunding escrow account. You will close on these bonds on November 6th. You'll have that money available until the call date, which is February 1st of 2019. So we're expecting you to earn about $135,000 in interest on those funds because the investment rate now on short-term investments is a little above 2%. So it shouldn't be a problem to earn that amount of interest, and that will be used then to call the bonds. So we're counting on that amount of interest earnings to be able to call the bonds on February 1st. Finally, the rating report is attached, and you'll see that they have the rating rationale, the outlook, factors that could lead to an upgrade and a downgrade, so same type of format that you are used to seeing when we've worked on other bond issues. Questions on the $1.5 million in savings for your taxpayers, or any of the details related to it? We talked about this, I know, when we were working on your facilities maintenance bonds in the spring, and I mentioned that we would have this opportunity because of the February 1st call date. You aren't able to issue the bonds until you're within 90 days of that call date. So this is just about as early as we could do it, and we're glad that we did it early because rates just keep going up. We were worried that we were going to be able to make our savings target with respect to the estimates we had a month ago, but luckily, everything turned out great, and I think we're going to continue to see rates go up. So we're happy to have this one locked in.
All right. First, we'll entertain a motion to approve the...
Excuse me.
So moved.
Oh.
Second.
Okay. So moved by Ron, second by Sharon. I was going to read the resolution, but we don't. All right. Any questions or comments other than thank you? That's awesome.
Yeah, I've got a comment and then a question. So correct me if I'm wrong, it was Shelby that came at our last meeting. So if you could pass on a thank you, because we put a lot of pressure on her because she was filling in, and we've always said Jody brings good news for us.
Okay.
And so you can tell her we really appreciate that she delivered some awesome news.
I will.
It's really the work that all of Ellers does for us is tremendous, and really thank you for the work. My question is always around the bond rating. Again, we've taken a hit because of our fund balance. Is that, again, why we didn't get the higher rating?
So if you look at the ratings rationale, the very first thing that they point out is the district's narrow financial position. They talk about your credit strengths, of course, large and growing tax base, strong resident income levels, enrollment growth, recent voter approval of the operating referendum. So all of those things are positives, but the first thing that they still point out again is the narrow financial position. And the first thing that they point out in factors that could lead to an upgrade is material increases in the fund balance and liquidity. So that still is their overriding concern with respect to the underlying rating that you have assigned.
Right. And during the conversation, Dan, do they give you a ballpark of a percent that they would feel a lot more comfortable with?
At this point, I mean, they would like to see us get to our
policy,
our fund balance policy, yeah. So at least 5%, but we'd like to get between 5 and 9, up to 9%. I think, you know, from what I can tell, you know, in all the conversations, that it's really, they want to see a plan and want to see a movement, and they did see an increase of over $2 million in the next budget. They did see that. We didn't have audited statements yet by the time we did the conference call, so that left them a little trepidation for them. But they did point out that they noticed the increase in our next year's budget, our current budget, 18-19 budget.
Okay, thanks.
Could I follow up on that? It seems easy to be downgraded. They can do that quickly. Is it harder for them to make that switch? It's not, if we get into the fund balance, is that perfunctory, or is it pretty difficult to get them to say, we're going to move you up again?
No, I think the problem is once you get downgraded, they want to see a trend that stays in place for 3 to 5 years. So I think once you get within your fund balance policy limit at least and stay at that level for 3 to 5 years, that will kind of be the measuring stick that they use. So yeah, it takes, as quickly as things can go down, it does take a little bit longer to have them recognize the upturn in your financial condition.
All right. Is there any other questions, comments? All right, so we're going to be voting on the resolution awarding the sale, determining the form and details, authorizing the execution, delivery, and registration, and providing for the payment of general obligations school building refunding bonds, Series 2018B. Roll call vote.
Pat Driscoll is absent. Heather Hirsch.
Yeah, yes.
Yes.
If you're voting yes.
Michelle Whitty.
Yes.
Katie Schwartz.
Yes.
Sharon Van Leer.
Yes.
Ron Cath.
Yes.
Tracy Brunette.
Yes. Thank you.
Great, thank you. I've got lots of paperwork for you to sign afterward.
11.0, reports and comments. 11.1 is our superintendent's report.
Thanks. As always, we try to tell you a little bit about what has happened in the past, what's currently going on in the future, and using Dan as a mentor, I was reading about a time when, recently when past and present walked into an establishment, and all I can say, it was tense. So I want to talk a little bit about the MDE safety grants. You've heard about that. MDE has put out information about the grant. But as you know, last legislative session, the legislators set aside $25 million for safety grants for the state. The dollars were divided between the metro area and the non-metro area school districts, with $12.5 million set aside for the metro and the same amount for the non-metro school districts. The application process was a lottery system where applications were given numbers based on the order they were received and then randomly drawn to determine which schools were funded. I think that's really important for our public as you understand that we had one school funded, and I'll explain that. So the applications also had to be based and written for each individual school or building within the district and not as an entire school district. So we submitted 25 separate applications, one for each of our schools and then one for our Next Step site, with similar requests depending on what the current safety needs were at each of our sites. The items requested in our applications represent the priorities that we've identified for moving forward to enhance our safety and security throughout our system. So on Friday, we received the notice from MDE informing us that the application for Red Rock Elementary was funded. The amount that Red Rock is funded through this grant system is $136,000 and $136,025. And so briefly, what's in the grant application is, first, it's listed as access control, and that's it's a vendor called Raptor. It's a check-in system that we're moving forward with all of our schools to move that in as our standard check-in system. We currently do have a parent check-in system, but this is a system that's a little bit more advanced. And what this will help us with is obviously we will not have to expend the funds for Red Rock, that it'll be taken care of. But that's important for our parents to understand that this complements a number of things we're doing as we move forward with all of our schools. The second area is the door alarm system. This is a system where if an outside door is opened, the office gets an alarm that that door was open. We're moving forward with that in some of our high schools, which in a large school like a high school with maybe 30 doors, it's really important to know if when you have the building locked down where you only can come in the front entrance if a door was propped open or for whatever reason. But we'll be able to install that in some of the doors that are important at Red Rock, and obviously we can do it in all the doors. And then a third area was enhanced communication. This is to incorporate a new and upgraded walkie-talkie system that we're also moving forward with already in some of our secondary schools. And this is a different type of communication system where schools could talk between each other on the walkie-talkie, and for Napoleon, our safety coordinator and emergency preparedness person, he has the ability to monitor and talk directly to the schools too. It enhances that reaction time and communication about what's happening in the buildings. And the fourth one is labeled an electronic emergency notification system. And that's the system that you have been updated on that we put in Altman Middle School. And that's where you have a panic button in each classroom that allows a teacher to have communication directly to the office and being able to be aware when there's issues, along with most of our buildings have amplification systems, but we'll upgrade the amplification system for teachers to wear the neck microphone system that also has a panic button embedded. And we are looking at that and have some abilities to try to move forward with that type of system in our other secondary, our other middle schools based on as we finish our construction projects. So we're very pleased to receive some of the funding that the state set aside for safety grants, and I hope that the legislators continue to, during this next session, to seek ways to help school districts throughout the state enhance their safety and security. Because of $25 million that were set aside, I don't know what the total number, but I believe, Heather, you had told me that within the first hour, something was $200 million in requests. So there's a great need throughout the state, and I know that'll be something that our legislators will take a look at. Second, as you know, we are excited that we opened our new, or our reestablished Altman Middle School. So we had a grand opening for the reestablished school on Sunday, September 23rd at 2 p.m. We began the celebration in the auditorium with welcoming comments and an in-depth explanation on the design features of the school presented by our principal, Joni Hagebach. We also were able to premiere a video that chronicled the construction project from the time we broke ground to the first day of school. And I'd like to show that video today for the public. It is on our website, but I think it's really interesting to watch the building come out of the ground and right to the first day of school. thank Shelley and Laura and Cassandra for putting the video together. And we're obviously very proud of the new school, but I'm also very proud of all of our learning environments throughout the district. But it's exciting to see as the staff and the students continue to explore how to utilize the collaborative spaces as they move forward, and to look at more efficient ways to learn. So it's interesting to think it was 2 years ago that we broke ground on the building this month, and you look at those December pictures and it feels like we're right there again. And I think we're kind of a little fatigued with construction now. We have a lot more to go at New Avis, but we're excited about that as we go through, and we really are set up for the future. You'll see next meeting that we'll be talking about our projections and what we think as far as the growth. Both the city of Woodbury will be here in Cottage Grove to present their plan, along with Mike Vogel, to give you, before he leaves us as he retires, his last thought on where he sees us over the next 10 years. So,
wow, thank you. Thanks. 11.2, school board member reports, and Pat cannot be here tonight, so she sent her report, so I'll just read hers quickly. Pat had attended the September 7th meeting of the Association of Metropolitan School Districts, where the focus was on ways to connect with legislators. Also on September 14 and 15, she attended the Phase 3 and Phase 4 training for new school board members. And on October 1st, attended the Fall Awards program at Woodbury High School. The auditorium was filled with proud parents and family members who witnessed many students receive awards for their high academic achievement. She was proud of the staff and administrators who helped these young people achieve those awards. So thank you, Pat. Sharon.
Okay. Let's see, I also, I forgot. I'll use my pen. All right, time for me to go home. Let's see, I attended the open house at Oatman also, which was really nice. I thought it was so nice to have the kids be greeters. It was so cute. And then I saw a lot of parents, got to connect with a lot of parents that I knew. And Julie, you were looking good. I do have to say that. The other thing that I did was I met with Christine and Kevin on some ideas about diversity and inclusion, culture, and climate. And so we may be rolling out some new things that I think will be good for the district. That's it.
Thank you. Katie.
Okay, so yesterday I was at the communicators, and they presented the standards base to that group, and I was a little weird about how the parents would react to it, because it is such a difference, and some of the parents there are high school parents, and you had elementary, you have middle school, but it was nice to see that all of them seemed really excited about it, and actually some of the high school ones seemed to be like, why aren't we doing this in the high school? Which I thought was weird, because you have that grade point average and class rank and all those things that when we first started talking about this were the concerns that a lot of the high school parents, and now they're like, well, we want to know what they're doing, we want to know how they're doing, and they want to know how they're doing and where they're at. And I agree, I think it would be a lot easier if you get a 1 or a 2 to, as a high school student, to be like, okay, this is where I need to be by the end of the year, rather than just getting a C or a B and being like, okay, why did I get a C or a B? So I'm excited to know that the work is being looked at. I know it's a long process, but just the fact that we can tell parents that we're trying is great. And then I had my 9/16 meeting last night, and this would be more on Kevin's side. They are using Schoology to onboard new employees. It's so they can go in and do it on their own time. So they have like their other HR stuff that they have to do like that first day. But then the rest of the stuff, like what would be our climate and culture and all that personalization you would add and all of that stuff, is in a course that they can take their time and do it, and then they can go back to it whenever they want to. And I thought that was a really neat idea to do it that way, and I I mean, as a parent, I know Schoology, but I didn't really even think about it as in that kind of sense. And they're hoping that it will help with retention, because being able to know exactly where to go to find something when you have an issue or when something comes up, rather than trying to go to the website and looking through policies and looking through this, everything's in one packet. I know they said they're going to try and fine-tune it this year and then possibly offer some sort of packet to member districts next year. So just so you're kind of a heads up, because it did seem really neat. It seemed like a good opportunity, and if we can use it to help our retention, that would be great. And then about a couple weeks ago, I volunteered at Oatman to hand out student planners. And I thought, oh, this is going to be fun, you know. The kids are going to be like, another thing. Every single classroom I walked into with those planners, the kids were like cheering. So it's just fun to see that the kids are really excited about getting a planner, because they're like, well, we don't have anywhere to write stuff down, and we're forgetting, and the kids were just really excited to see a planner. So it was actually a really fun thing, and plus, you know, my kid was there, so I got a tormentor. But other than that, yeah, it was good.
Thank you. Ron?
No report this month.
All right. Michelle?
One exciting thing is I get to pop in the East Metro collaborative competition for robotics. So I got to see the brand new floor at Eastridge High School that had the flood damage this year, which looks gorgeous. And it looked absolutely gorgeous even after all of these robots were all over it. So they do an amazing job. All volunteer effort, and a lot of the funders that we saw before us a couple meetings ago that support that. It's just really another great, fabulous thing for those of us robotic geeks. So, and also it's been very interesting sitting on the legislative committee for Association of Metro School Districts. It's very sobering sitting on the committee. We're looking at how many things are on the platform and how many complications we have. But one of the big things was how the 3% is becoming the new 2%. The reality that 2% is what we kind of felt we always needed to ask for in the general fund, but inflation has been over 2%. We're getting closer to 3%, and so just looking at the financial realities of all districts, I mean, we're very fortunate in many ways, but there's no bright light there, and the need for a lot of tough conversations. What I enjoy is there's so many smart people around the table, though, to have those conversations with. So it's fun to be able to bring some of our districts' questions and thoughts to the table. So that's it for me.
Thank you. Heather?
Yeah, I don't have much aside from getting to tour Oatman in the past couple weeks, which was really exciting. My daughter's really disappointed that is not the school she is slated to attend next year. I'm not arguing in any way to redistrict. That is just to be clear. Sometimes you get disappointed in life, and that is what we're working through right now. But no, it was beautiful, and it was great to go on the tour and to see principal getting kind of everything ready. And we were fortunate to go in kind of right before school started, so it was really fun to see everything. And just excited to see all of our new staff. At the meeting tonight, I know we've had a few meetings since the school year started, but kind of getting to see a lot of our new staff kind of presenting and in their roles and hearing what they're doing is exciting, and all of the school climate and social emotional learning work is, for me, just personally really exciting to see across our district. So, yeah.
Thank you. And I had attended the open house at Oatman too. Amazing school. So if you have a chance, go visit. It's very nice. 12.0 future meeting dates. 12.1 is Wednesday. We'll emphasize Wednesday, October 17th. And then 12.2, November 1st is another regular board meeting. And with that, we're adjourned.